morning. Thank you very much for responding to our call for this briefing, which is being hosted by Mr. Tom Moyane. And Eric Mabuza, his attorney, is going to read the statement. Then we're going to take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is now about 3 months. Which one should? Thank you. It is now about 3 months since the suspension of the president, suspension by the president of Mr. Moyane from his office as Commissioner of SARS. There is no end in sight in this saga. The current impasse is obviously bad for tax collection as there is no tax commissioner. One need not be an economist to appreciate that without optimum and stable tax collection, there can never be economic prosperity. The record built up in the last 3 tax cycles when successive and increasing amounts of well over 1 trillion were collected by SARS for the first, second, and third time in the history of South Africa is at risk of being reversed. The entire saga is very complex and confusing, especially in light of multiple inquiries, furious exchange of correspondence, rulings, and confusion added by the media. It has therefore become necessary to put the matter in its true perspective and to give an update for the benefit of the nation, the business community, and all other interested parties. At the heart of this unnecessary impasse is one simple issue: fairness in dealing with a fellow human being, a concept which is best defined by the African philosophy of Ubuntu. In the last 3 months, Mr. Moyane has had to endure every single type of unfairness and injustice imaginable, including, to mention but a few, verbal insults, wild and unfounded accusations, unfair suspension, trial by media, parallel inquiries, to endure every single type of unfairness and injustice imaginable, including, to mention a few, verbal insults, wild and unfounded accusations, unfair suspension, trial by media, parallel inquiries, denial of the basic right to cross-examine one's accusers, the appointment of a biased chairperson in Judge Kate O'Regan, the appointment of a conflicted panelist in Professor Michael Kurtz, an inadmissible affidavit of a hostile minister of an irrelevant portfolio, unlawfully obtained evidence, invasion of his privacy and family space, media leaks from the highest office in the land to embedded journalists, doctored audio tapes, bias leading of selective evidence by disgruntled employees. Ladies and gentlemen, it is against that background that Commissioner Moyane was pleasantly surprised to receive the latest letter from the Honorable President in which, for the very first time, sanity seems to have prevailed. This letter, which he welcomes, was a breath of fresh air. It contains the President's response to a specific set of demands with a deadline of last Friday, which was met by demand was for the President to start parallel inquiries, currently or in the Constitutional Court. The cautious and commendable approach is that the President will await the ruling of Advocate Azar Bam SC on the objections raised and which are scheduled for oral argument on 21 July 2018. Before receiving the President's letter, we already held firm instructions from Mr. Moyane to bring a court application to review and set aside last week's ruling of Commissioner Nugent, based on gross irrationality. Among other irregularities, he refused to excuse Professor Michael Katz, who has effectively admitted to his conflict of interest as being the President's personal attorney. That ruling was in any event made by an improperly constituted commission in the unexplained absence of all the appointed assistants to Commissioner Nugent. However, our courts correctly discourage piecemeal litigation, and the President's new approach will thankfully allow for all the unlawful decisions to be attacked in one consolidated court action. What do we mean? To decode the current state of affairs for the benefit of the public, this is what we are saying. In the next 2 to 4 weeks, the President must adopt one of 3 scenarios and either decide to, 1, stop both inquiries, or 2, stop one of the inquiries, or 3, continue with two parallel inquiries. There is no other logical choice, ladies and gentlemen. His choice will only be exercised once the President has applied his mind to our correspondence and the 2 rulings before him. Until then, the future of any current inquiry is up in the air. Due caution will have to be exercised before taxpayers' money can be potentially wasted on processes which may or may not be soon discontinued by the President or the courts. In welcoming the President's well-considered approach and ostensibly respect for his oath to uphold, respect, and defend the Constitution, the previous cumulative and serial and multiple violations of the Constitution have been limited. Now, Mr. Moyane appeals for restraint in the ongoing process of gratuitous insults, defamation of character, and all other unfair treatment to which he has been subjected by the media and others who profess to be independent and objective, not to mention fairness. Commissioner Moyane is also filled with confidence and hope that the process before Advocate Bam SC, who understands the importance of basic civil liberties, will be conducted with decency and a keen appreciation of the values of our young constitutional democracy, including fairness and human dignity. As a public lawyer, such values should come as second nature to Advocate Bam SC. For his part, Commissioner Moyane will continue to maintain his dignified silence and only communicate via the good offices of his legal representatives, as currently advised. The time will surely come when he will be called upon to account personally as a servant of the public. His silence must, however, never be mistaken for cowardice, timidity, or a weakened resolve to fight for his rights, for justice, and for fairness. To do so would be a grave mistake on the part of his detractors. In the end, evil never triumphs over good. The current situation will be no exception. This is therefore the time for cool heads and a need to emulate the President's latest approach. The economic future of all South Africans depends on it. Let justice and fairness prevail. Let's all put the era of populist bloodletting, personality-driven vendettas, and abuse of power behind us in this matter. This situation cries out for much-needed decisive leadership and the spirit of Ubuntu and fair dealing. Ladies and gentlemen, even in war, there are common rules of engagement and decency. All concerned parties better heed the warning that in South African law, in appropriate circumstances, even a guilty employee can be reinstated to his or her office purely on the basis of procedural unfairness. Thank you for listening.
So we're going to take your questions. Eric will be able to answer them. Do you have questions? Okay, so we'll start with you.
Yeah.
Can you start with?
Thank you. Amanda Watson from the Citizen. Where is the evidence that you're going to give the judge and you're going to release to us? Why haven't you released that to us yet?
Okay. Second question. Start with you.
Somebody from Afro Worldview. In just in the president's response, does it seem like he's leaning towards suspending one or both of the inquiries, or where is he leaning towards in his response?
We're going to take that question.
Andrew Harding, BBC. Your critics would say this is a cynical attempt to basically block justice, to use a Stalingrad defense. I wonder whether you could actually respond in person, because it does seem strange to hold a press conference and not actually speak.
Okay, thank you. I'll answer the
last one.
Okay.
Then we'll take another section. Yeah, your question. We'll have some more questions.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's Penny from Eyewitness News. I just wanted to know what is the, if you could just sum up why we're here, what is the message that you want to tell us today, that you're happy with the president? And the second question is, when are you and your client going to respond to the actual charges made against him in the Nugent inquiry perhaps, but more so in the Barr inquiry? So will you then now be responding to the charges in the Barr inquiry? Are you still standing by your request that whatever was presented to the Barr inquiry be expunged because of whatever you've raised? And the fourth thing, you've been threatening legal action from the very beginning. Are you going to go to court at all, or is just sort of, what is your response? When are you going to court? And then just also, if you could just assist me, you say that you're excited or you're pleased by the president's approach in his letter to you. What is it different? What was it from the president's response? From what I understand by listening to you is that the president says, let's wait for Barr to make a ruling, then I'll decide. So what is it that's so different that you're now saying the president has been great to us, let's be fair to him? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll start with a question from Andrew. I must confess, I've never understood this concept of Stalingrad approach, especially in the context where Mr. Moyane is simply asking for fairness in the whole process. If you followed the case, you would have seen that his stance has always been consistent. He's always said he wants the inquiry to be fair. Let's start with the inquiry before Barr. The initial complaint was that the president wanted the inquiry on paper. Ostensibly, that is unfair, and we've raised that issue pertinently with the president. Similarly, before Nugent, we complained about the unfairness of not having been invited to the inquiry. We complained about the presence of Professor Michael Katz. So there's absolutely nothing Stalingrad about that. We've always said, once the president removes the stumbling blocks, we are happy to attend the inquiry in a day or so. If indeed seeking for fairness is Stalingrad, my client is happy to be labeled as such. We'll come to the question of the memory stick, Amanda. The memory stick is not available. In due course, it will be released. You'll remember that in two weeks ago, recordings were leaked to the media. some of the recordings were tampered with. We are not going to do that. When the time that the recordings, we release the recordings, we'll release them in a responsible manner. We can appreciate that the recordings themselves may implicate some people. We've got to do it in a very, very respectable manner.
Okay, but to follow up to that question, so you were happy for the judge to release it last week. Now you're not happy for it. Were you hoping the judge would give it judicial authority?
That's the point. We're happy to release it to a duly authorized legal authority, being the judge.
You're happy with the commission as a whole?
All we said, you'll recall, all we said to the judge was that, Judge, here is the memory stick. We're leaving it in your hand. The judge refused to do that. You can't blame us for this.
We'll take care of you.
In due course, ma'am. Juanita, coming to your questions. Fortunately, you and I have been engaged in this matter for quite some time, and you've written a lot about this. And we've debated the issue about, you want us to respond to BAM, and we say we are happy to respond to BAM provided all the obstacles have been removed. In fact, you'll have noticed that we've in fact responded to BAM. We've raised an objection, something which we're entitled to do in law. It is not us who adopted motion proceedings on paper. It is the president. And in terms of the rules of court, we are allowed to raise a legal objection. You would have seen our objections we raised about the affidavit of Minister Godan. We raised the objection about even the adoption of motion proceedings in this case. We say it's unfair. A hearing, you know it, an understanding of a hearing, simple understanding is when people come and testify. In fact, just to alert you, had we started with oral hearing, that process would have been completed. Witnesses would have gone through, they would have been cross-examined, and would now have a verdict, would not be in this limbo. Then on your other question of what has the president done that is different, I'm afraid I don't know how to put this in a more polite way. The letter that we had sent to the president was very specific. The demands that we had put were very specific. Had the president not complied with the demands, we would surely have gone to court. So to put it in a colloquial terms, we would say the president blinked. He really blinked and saw that our demands were very direct and very reasonable. Probably he got good legal advice this time to say he should await the outcome of the BAM's inquiry. And we think it's a very, very sensible way to deal with the matter. That's why we commend the president for the stance that he's taken.
Then he asked for more time. Yeah. Then he asked for more time. Is that the stuff that you're happy about?
You will recall that we've always complained that you can't have two processes. What has happened is that the president has realized that the two processes are in fact one. He's consolidated the two processes himself.
How?
Remember, the president says he appreciates our concern that there are two processes going on. If the president had not appreciated that concern, he would have told us to go to court. But he says we've got a fair concern, got a fair point. He wants to await the outcome of the BAM inquiry before he decides which course of action to take. It seems to me eminently reasonable. Any further questions?
Councillor, so are you going to court now? You're not going to court? You're keeping your court proceedings to wait to see what happens with either one of the inquiries? Not quite clear what's happening there.
What we're saying is that had we not received the president's response, we would definitely have gone to court. But now the president said, give me time so that I can have the benefit of BAM. So there is no point in us going to court. We have said in our statement, our courts don't encourage piecemeal litigation. If the outcome, or if the president decides that he wants to run the two processes, we will surely go to court. There's no doubt about that.
Can we have more questions? We'll start with you.
Good morning, sir. I'm Pauline from Daily Maverick. You talked about Mr. Moyane getting an unfair suspension, trial by media. There's a denial of his basic right to be cross-examining his accusers. And then you talk about doctored tapes. So I presume there that you're talking about the Alhaf Lombard tape that accuses you of not allowing him or instructing him not to go and testify in front of the KPMG Commission or the KPMG investigation. Now, would you, if you say that it's doctored and that it's sort of made up against you and that it's false, would you be willing to go for a voice analysis test in that regard? The second thing, I hope that you can help me with clarity here, because the picture that I'm getting, and I hope that you can clear it up for me, is that there are a few things that you're skewing almost, that we all here know to be true or untrue. One of those would be what you just said about the president. You said the president realized that the two processes are one. Now, there's nothing in any of the procedures that tell us that that is what the president says. If you can help me to tell me how did you make that, how did you deduce that? The second thing there is that Mr. Katz basically admitted to be Mr. Ramaphosa's personal attorney. We've all sat in the commission, there was no such admission. So you can help us to clear that up as well. And then you said, Mr. Moyane, that we should not see your silence as timidity and that you're fighting for justice. Now, there are 2 points that I would want to help, or I would want you to address us on. The first is all the affidavits, all the submissions to the inquiry and to Mr. Bum has been under oath. You are continuously telling us that you are not guilty, that you are being targeted, but none of it is under oath ever. And just to remind you too that Mr. Alhaf Lombard has also made his submissions under oath. So if he lies or doctors that voice note or voice recording, he may go to jail. And we don't have anything similar under oath from you. And the second point on there, I would want to ask you to please tell us how we should take that seriously, that you are being done in here. Whereas there are 2 examples, for example, when you were the commissioner, Mr. Alhaf Lombard and Mr. Yandebal is still under suspension from your time since 2015. I mean, that is very unfair. And you were the one who always fought for Mr. Mkwakwa, saying that he is being unfairly treated and that you must bring him back to SARS. And now the same with you, but there's people that's been suspended from 2015.
Thanks. Thank you. Let me just take this question because it's long.
We'll answer Paul's questions first.
Juanita, and in fairness to you, Juanita, in fairness to you, the only other person who's written more on this matter than you is Polly.
It's okay.
Polly, you've written extensively on this matter and you've been provided with a lot of evidence. I understand your questions, but one thing that you must appreciate, especially when you are a journalist, and you must have a bit of distance between the matter that you are reporting on and the actual facts. Most of the issues that you complain of, you don't have.
It's not a complaint.
Let me answer. I've given you time.
I'm not complaining.
Well, your question came as you were pointing issues to my client. Most of the issues that you complain of or you say is evidence is actually not what you say it is. I'll give an example of the recording. Had you listened to that recording properly with a forensic ear to it, you would have heard that Mr. Moyane in that recording thanks the gentleman. You, as a journalist, I would have expected you to ask yourself a question: what was he thanking him for? I didn't see that in your reporting, because that's the first thing that you would have gone deeper. The other issue that you would have asked yourself, as a journalist, an experienced journalist you are, you would have noticed that in that recording, Mr. Moyane says you can go to the KPMG inquiry then another time. Those are an object. I'm not saying you must take his side, but all I'm saying, you must report fairly, truthfully. Don't get involved in the subject matter. And I suspect in this case you may be involved because you've been involved in the matter for some time.
Answer the question.
Let's
Answer the
try away
question.
from accusations, sir. I
Don't
think
make
we should
accusations.
go
If you've
to...
got a problem,
I'm answering the question. I'm explaining to her
No,
that
you're making accusations.
I'm not attacking integrity, sir.
you absolutely are.
I'm not attacking
No, you
integrity.
are, sir. You're
Just
making
answer her
accusations
question.
here.
I'm answering the
All I want
question,
to ask
sir.
is, will Mr. Moyane go and do a voice test? Because you just told us that he was actually thanking Mr. Al-Haq. Now it seems as if it is Mr. Moyane. So I think we would just want to ask you, give us a clear indication, what is wrong with the recording? That is all we ask.
All I'm saying, had you listened to that recording properly, you would have realized that there was an initial discussion between the two. That's all that I'm saying. I'm not attacking you. That's all that I'm
I'd like to
saying.
hear that.
Yes.
So what is the answer to that question? Will Mr. Moyane go and do a voice test? And what is wrong with the recording now that we're saying that it's not admissible and that it's actually being unfair to Mr. Moyane? Why is it unfair to Mr. Moyane?
There's no need for Mr. Moyane to go through voice recording. That evidence must be placed before BAM, and it will be dealt with during the BAM inquiry. There's no need for him to take any polygraphy test or recording. It will be dealt with in the appropriate time.
But we still don't know what's wrong with it.
Fully. Let the inquiry start and we'll deal with it. If you could exercise some patience.
But sir, you bring this issue to us. Now we're not allowed to question you on it. That is the only thing that I'm asking. I would want to report fairly, otherwise I'm going to be accused again of being unfair. I would want to say this is the issue, 1, 2, 3. I'm really trying to put your side here, so my questions are designed so that you can give us facts and structure.
We are saying to you, we said to you that that recording is doctored. It's doctored. We'll be able to demonstrate that in the inquiry.
Why not demonstrate it now, Mr. Moyane?
We're not in the inquiry.
From
sir.
News 24, sorry. I'm the journalist who first reported on the recording. You're saying you're going through a trial by media, so present your evidence. Show us the recording was doctored, and we will run a story.
Sir, we will deal with that issue in the inquiry. Mr. Moyane is not under trial here. We'll deal with that in the inquiry. When evidence is provided, we'll be able to deal with it. Polly, the other thing that you should also ask yourself with that recording, why was it leaked? Why is it not presented in the appropriate forum before BAM? Because you'll remember that is one of the charges that my client is facing. I would have thought the proper place to deal with that is before the inquiry, not through secret leakings.
It's already before court in an NPA case, in a total different case. So, I mean, it could have been leaked for months, actually.
Maybe
It's not only in this situation.
you may be right, but we'll deal with that in the inquiry.
Can you have more questions?
No, sorry, but I've had a lot of questions.
What other questions did I not respond
So
to?
I've asked you to please help me understand, because the idea that I'm getting is that the picture that you are giving us is skewed. So I hope that you can clear it up for me, because the one thing that you said is the president realized there's two processes are one. Now we've seen all the letters, we've seen your submissions, we've heard the president talk about the matter, we've heard you talk about the matter, but we are not seeing where the president realized the two processes are now one. So how did you deduce that? And the second thing is, again, that seems to be skewed to me, but I hope that you can clarify, is the irregularities refused to excuse by Mr. Katz. You basically admitted to be Mr. Ramaphosa's personal attorney. Where did he admit that?
Thank you.
We've all sat in the commission.
Thank you.
And we've heard Mr. Nugent. There was no admitting that he's the personal attorney. So we would just like to hear where you get that from.
Thank you. We were able to understand the cat's problem from the letter that Commissioner Nugent read to us, that is currently acting for Mr. Ramaphosa.
No, you didn't say
No,
that.
you didn't say that.
We know that as a fact. We're involved in other litigation where we know that as a fact. Take it from us, we know it as a fact. On the issue of the other issue that you're raising is about the linking of the two processes. In a similar way that you are trained to analyze news that is before you, we are able to analyze the correspondence from the president, and we understood that his response must have realized that the points we made about the two parallel processes being the same must be valid. Otherwise, the president would have told us that he's continuing with the inquiry. That is our understanding from our decoding, our experience from that response.
So this is not something that was said in the letter, as in, this is just maybe, if I could call it that, lack of a better word, your assumption,
Opinion.
or opinion rather.
No,
yes.
you can go and ask the president's people, they'll tell you that our understanding is it's a correct understanding, because the president, if he did not believe that we'd made correct points, fair points, he would have told us that to go to court.
Okay,
It's not even a difficult issue. If you think about it, you've listened to the evidence that was led in the inquiry, and also the affidavit by Minister Praveen. You'd have seen that both issues touched during his period of governance at SARS. So it's not really a contentious issue at all.
And the third point there was about you not being invited to the inquiry. I mean, we've seen the letters, we've seen the letter inviting the whole country to go before it. We've seen Mr. Nugent's decision on it. So do we detract from that you still do not agree with it?
We don't agree. You would have seen from our statement that we have instructions to take all those rulings on review. We believe that we have good prospects. You won't be able, if you look at that letter, you won't be able to see the invitation. And the invitation is not only as per the letter. You would have seen that the other witnesses consulted with the evidence leader. That is the invitation. We did not get that. We were never consulted. We were informed a Wednesday before the hearing started as a courtesy.
You've been informed long time before.
Show me, you can tell me when we're informed. You can tell me. If you have evidence of that, I invite you to tell me, to show me that.
Can we get the question from the back?
Yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
we'll start with you.
Maybe to clarify, could you read us President Ramaphosa's letter?
You-
Maybe that could clarify what you are saying.
You will get the pack at the end of this thing with President's letter.
Because maybe that will make a bit
Yeah,
more sense.
you'll
to
get
the
the-
points that you were raising.
You will get it at the end of with a pack. It's not a secret.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Good morning, Aldrin St-Pierre from ENCA. Mr. Mabuza, we came here to this press briefing under the pretense that Mr. Moyane would be addressing us during this press briefing on latest developments regarding current affairs or current matters. Can we then at least get one quote from him on how this whole matter is affecting him personally, and whether he feels that the president is conducting a witch hunt or not?
Alfred, thank you for your question. Once again, if you read the press alert carefully, you'll see it says he's hosting. That's all it says, he's hosting. Doesn't say you'll be speaking. It doesn't say you'll be speaking. Read it carefully. It was carefully crafted. In time, Mr. Moyane will be able to speak. In time. It's under advice that he's not speaking, but in time.
Can you at least say how this is affecting him personally?
You will also remember,
Nothing under oath.
you'll also remember that. You'll also remember that as an attorney, I'm his extension. So whatever I say, I reflect his views and his feelings on the matter. So don't worry about that.
Mr. Moyane, Naredi from SABC. Mr. Moyane had also requested legal assistance for the processes that are currently underway. What happens to that request, whether it's the ABAM inquiry or this inquiry? What's the response? What was the president's response to that?
You will remember that when we asked for that funding, legal assistance, everyone was up in arms and say, oh no, he should not be entitled to use state funds. He's funding himself. He's still standing, he's funding himself. In due course, maybe the issue will arise again. But as we speak, he is funding himself and he's still continuing with his defense. Thank you.
Hi, Natasha from the Business Day newspaper.
Hi, Natasha, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Welcome, welcome.
I'm trying to understand the president linking. Forgive me, I'm probably being really ignorant about this. But how did the president blink? In your letter to Advocate Dan, you raised, the last point in it raises the concern about two parallel processes. In your letter, subsequently to the president, around the Nugent inquiry, around the following the Nugent ruling, you raised the concern about the two separate processes. I'm trying to follow your interpretation, and I'm asking you, how did the president blink when he responds directly to your concerns about the two parallel processes? Please explain it to me.
Thanks. Natasha, when we wrote to the president, he was already armed with a supposedly strong ruling from Commissioner Nugent. We said there was nothing wrong with two processes going on. That's what he had when he received our letter. But upon receipt of our letter, it must have been obvious to the president that he could not go ahead with the Nugent ruling. That's why he awaits the BAM's inquiry, because he could have said to us, look, Nugent says there's absolutely nothing wrong with me running the two processes concurrently. He did not do that. That's where the blinking is. Do you understand? Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Nomisa, the Botswana from the Medan Guardian. So as we understand now, the Nubian process will continue because they will be continuing like collecting documents and questioning in the background without the public hearing. So are you happy for that process to continue while you await the outcome of BAM's inquiry?
You know, we are concerned about that. It may result in wastage, taxpayers' money being wasted. If it is found that, in fact, the Nugent inquiry should not have continued, that would result in wastage of taxpayers' money. But what we will certainly not allow is for hearings to continue. Remember, the BAM's inquiry may take 2 to 4 weeks before the outcome is known. So if Commissioner Nugent decides to start with the hearings, we will certainly register our strongest objections to that, including going to court to stop that.
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
So I would want to ask you just the question that I've asked previously, just to shine light on it again. Mr. Moyane continuously says that SARS and continues to pay his legal fees. And I wanted to ask, how is he being treated unfairly when in his time he suspended Mr. Algat Lombard and Mr. Johan de Waal, and he refused them to this day legal fees being paid by SARS. So I don't see how it will work that Mr. Moyane gets paid his legal fees by SARS, but he refused his colleagues to in the same manner.
You know, I suppose he is entitled to assert his rights. If the others did not assert their rights, I suppose it's their own problem. But he is entitled to assert his rights. If he believes that he should get legal representation at state's cost, so be it. The issue must be decided by either the president or the courts. We can't bring personal hurts and grudges that, he did not allow someone else before us, therefore we can't ask for that.
No,
It's
I
just
don't think it's a personal grudge. So the picture that I'm trying to paint is SARS employees under Mr. Moyane has been treated in a certain way by Mr. Moyane. Now he seems to ask for different treatment. So I want clarity on that. Am I wrong?
they should have taken him on if they believed that it was wrong. There was absolutely nothing that stopped them from taking on, saying, "You're mistaken, Commissioner. We're entitled to legal representation at SARS expense." All he's doing is just asserting his rights. Nothing, interestingly, all of us speak glowingly of our constitution as being a shining beacon, the best in the world. But now when Mr. Moyane wants to exercise those very rights in the constitution, we seem to feel that he is not entitled. We seem to feel that, fairness should not apply to everyone, should apply to everyone except him. And that is wrong.
So we have a pack here, and it has both the statement that was read out by Eric, as well as supporting documents, which you are going to get. I see that we've printed only 20. We underestimated the appetite. If there's anyone who doesn't get, we'll just email it to you. And secondly, those who come from the same news organization, if you can just share it, please. We've got just the last few rounds of questions from you, Juanita, and from yourself. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Robertson, I just wanted some clarity. If you could help us, for those that are in broadcast, can you summarize why are we here? What is the message? What is the message you want to communicate to South Africans through us today? What is it that we're here for? Secondly, I don't think we've answered the question as, what are you going to do? The President has responded. Effectively, it's a wait-and-see game until the 21st of July. Are you saying that it's now a ceasefire? You're not going to respond, you're not going to do anything, you're waiting for BAM, and you're waiting for the President, and then you'll act? What is it that you're going to do from now until then? Have you called us here to say you're not doing anything, you're going to wait? The third question I feel like we don't have clarity on is, what is it that the President said that made you change your mind? Or what is it that the President assured you? You said the President blinked. The President said, I'm going to wait for BAM. How is I'm going to wait for BAM any different to anything else he said to you in the past? Why is this so monumental that you are now, clapping your hands and are pleased that the President took this approach that I am going to wait for BAM? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me deal with your questions, 3 of them, one by one, so that we clarify whatever confusion. Juanita, there are 2 parallel processes going on. There are rulings and there are letters by us, rulings by Nugent, there are hearings before BAM. It's quite confusing for ordinary people, including people that have been following this matter. So what we really came here to do was to clear the confusion, to explain to the public the different processes that are taking place. You can appreciate it's not an easy matter. There are different objections before Nugent, similar objections before BAM. It's quite confusing for ordinary people. So the purpose of today was to come and clarify that confusion so that the public, business people can know what is happening. SARS is a very, very important institution for our country. It's important that everyone knows what is happening in SARS. That's the first reason we're here, to clarify, to remove any confusion. The second reason we called you here is to inform you about the President's response to our letter. You are asking, what is it that the President has said that has made us to so-called stop ceasefire? The President has suggested a model that works. He's saying to us, look, the Nugent hearings are not happening, won't happen until August. There is a hearing by BAM on the 21st. Let me await the outcome of BAM for me to decide what action to do. Do I stop one of the inquiries? Do I stop both? Or do I continue? In the face of that, it's a sensible approach. We could not go to court and fight for what? Because the President says, give me time until BAM. BAM is in 2 weeks. It's the most sensible approach. That's why we are pleased. Even the spirit of that, I mean, you remember that there was a lot of bloodletting before, but now the president seems to look at this matter with a well-considered view to say, perhaps let me get the benefit of BAM before I make up my mind. That is the most, that is leadership, the most decisive thing the president has done in respect of this matter. The third issue you asked me was about BAM. Have I clarified that issue as well?
So you're waiting for BAM to rule on your objections?
On our objections, that's correct.
And so when will you take a decision of the court threats after that?
Now, of course, BAM can agree with us. Remember, there's also that possibility that BAM can say, we are quite correct. In that case, the president will have to make an election. So it's not always that BAM will as a seasoned lawyer, he may agree. If he doesn't agree with us, we will discuss with our client. If we receive firm instructions, we'll take both the BAM process and the Nugent process on review so that it's one consolidated review. So we have not threatened court, we've just adopted a very cautious approach now, and in fact, not only cautious, but sensible approach in the light of the president's response.
Okay, your question, then we'll come to you. We'll come to you.
Mr. Mabuza, if the chief concern is the wastage of taxpayers' money, why not go to court and get an interdict now and not have to even wait for President Ramaphosa?
I'm really surprised by that question because the president assures us, the president of the country, our leader, says there won't be any processes going on until the 21st. Why would you want to interdict that? Just doesn't make sense. He's assured us, he's given us, let me finish, at least you've answered the question. You've asked the question. We get an assurance under the letter of the president, and he says, I am assuring you there won't be hearings. The BAM's hearings are happening on the 21st. There is no prejudice to you. It would be illogical. It would make us look like we don't know what we're doing, where to go to court. The court will kick us out. They will say all sorts of terrible things. They'll be justified to tell us that we are wrong. But we've always been reasonable. We've never tried to be unreasonable. We've maintained a reasonable stance. So the suggestion that you're making would make absolutely no sense.
Your question.
Just wondering whether you thought this event was a good idea. I think some people would interpret this as a very subjective reading of a letter from the president, which you then appear to use to insult him, suggesting as a civil servant that the president of the country is blinked in some sort of personalised power battle between the two. Would strike many people, I suspect, watching this as very, very bizarre.
Well, I don't know how you come to that we are insulting the president. All we are saying is that the president realized from our response that his options are limited. He had to do what we asked him to do. The president, remember, sir, the president might as well have told us to go to court, to take him to court. That would have been perfectly legitimate. We would have had to make an election. But the president adopted a very sensible approach, in our view, where he says he would await the outcome of BAM. For us, it's very sensible. I don't see where the insult is, sir.
Quick 2 minutes as we close. Is Commissioner Tom Moyane, or does Commissioner Tom Moyane still want to go back to SARS and finish his term off as Commissioner of SARS? Considering what it seems like at the moment, that the relationship between his political head, as you said, our leader, has broken down.
Well, you know, the letter from the president is very encouraging. It's very, very encouraging. You'll see it yourself. It's very encouraging. If Commissioner Moyane is not found guilty, there's absolutely nothing that stops him from going back to SARS. It's the most logical thing. If the powers that be don't want him at SARS, there's a process that can be initiated to deal with that. But if he's not found guilty, it would be unfair for anyone to say he must still not go back to SARS. It's like those cases where people get found not guilty in court, but they still get detained. You know, it just doesn't make sense. But if he's not found guilty, he must go back to SARS and serve the nation.
Even though the relationship with his political head has broken down?
Well, that's the election that the political head would have to make and say, look, chap, the relationship has broken down, maybe this is what happened. But he's willing to serve, happy to serve.
Okay, I think we've done. Thank you so much for your presence.
Thank you very much. Thank you.